welcome to week 6 in our Bible study. We're so excited. We want to thank you all so much for tuning in online and for being here in the building with us. I'm super excited because I have two of the most well-known Bible scholars with me tonight.
They called in sick, so we showed up.
That's right.
That's hilarious. It's so funny. So you guys, I don't even know if I said, I'm Cindy. I've been here with Jeff and Shanna this whole time. I love this Bible study. Yes. Discipleship class is so amazing. I'm loving doing it this way. I hope that everyone else is. I just think that it's going to be better and better every week when we do this.
It's going to be sad when it's over.
It will with this one, but then we know that there are more coming and there's going to be more teachers.
That's
and
right.
It's just going to be awesome. So you guys introduce yourselves.
Karen?
I'm Karen. I'm Brian's wife, and I'm just awesome, ready, so thankful to be here, and ready to go for this great session.
That's right. I am Brad, and so me and Karen are a part of the discipleship team here at The Rock,
yes.
and you'll probably see us later, maybe next semester or something like that. But tonight, Jeff and Shanna are out vacationing it up, and so Cindy asked us to be a part of it.
We're
excited.
Yes. Woo. Can y'all believe how fast this class is going?
No, it's been incredible.
It has. It's been so amazing. So I want to recap. On week 1, we did a lesson. It was titled Brother Servant. And then we did trials and temptations, and hearer and doers, and then judgment and mercy. And then last week we did faith and works. Tonight we're going to talk about blessings and curses. And I feel like I say this every single week. Every week I'm like, this is the most impactful and the most relative to 2020. And so tonight, this is the most impactful and relative to 2020, right? I really hope that everybody gets a lot out of this. I know that I have already.
It's been very good.
When we were studying before class, I just talking to y'all and hearing your versions of what you read throughout the week, I just love that. I think that's awesome. It's one of my favorite parts about this is being able to interact with everybody and see what an impact the book of James has on their life and this story of Jesus and how he changes their lives. I just love it.
There's something powerful, I think, about hearing somebody else's perspective. And even online, comment the things that are speaking to you. Because whenever you hear somebody else's perspective, it just brings it more to light.
It totally does. Yeah, it really does. So last week we talked about our actions and how our actions reveal our faith. We talked about how true saving faith is evident in our works, and that works don't save us, but we should be able to see that faith through our works. And this week we're going to talk about how that applies to our words. The words that we speak reveal what's in our hearts, right?
Very powerful.
Yeah. Does it?
Yes. Words can really impact, and they have such a lasting effect, and it's so important for us to stop and realize how what we say can affect others and their outcome and their future and
their whole life.
And it just doesn't stop. Words have a ripple effect that they keep going. It's like the ocean. Those waves just keep going, and those words are always, always
right.
going.
Especially, I feel like in a time like now, it's political season. It's just that time where we've got words and we've got opinions and we've got thoughts and ideas, and really just thinking the things that we say and the things that we speak, they impact the people that are around us. And not only that, but they impact people's impression of Christ and people's impression of Christianity. When they see believers talk a certain way or use a certain mode of speech, it makes an impact.
It does, for sure. So how often, I just did a Jeff Watson. If y'all had a cup, you could put it out. I just clapped. I would owe you money.
I miss Jeff.
How often do you think the average person speaks in a day?
Well, it depends on the day. But I would say, several times. I don't know, are we talking words, phrases? Are we talking
Hours.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking political? Are we talking social media? I mean, when you add all those together, that can really add up to a lot of
Be a lot, huh?
words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say probably too much.
Probably
I
too
think
much.
I probably talked too much.
Me too. Karen said before class that she doesn't feel like she talks that much, and she's hoping Brian's not watching tonight. That's
I'm
funny.
sure he's typing right now.
Brian, let us know your opinion.
No,
Drop
no,
your
no.
comments down
Be
below,
nice.
as they say in the makeup tutorials.
Yeah.
Okay, so in our Bible study, we learned that an average person, spends about 1/5 of their life talking. That's
Wow,
a
that's
lot.
crazy.
Brad did really
20%.
fast. That's fast math right there. 20% of your, I mean, it's not fast math, but it's math, and math is hard. So I saw Matt Chandler had said that if all of our words were put into print, one single day would fill up a 50-page book. And in a year, we would fill up 132 books with 200 pages each. And that's
Wow.
just an average person. That's a lot. That's a
a
lot of communicating.
A lot of words.
That means I talk in one day more than I read in a whole year.
Oh my gosh.
That's terrible, but it's true.
That's bad.
Other than the Bible. Other than the
I do too.
Yes.
Okay, other than the Bible. So we're constantly talking, right? And like you said before, like that does include text and social media. And so we are communicating creatures. We're created by a God who communicates. And so we're meant to communicate. So if 1/5 of our life is spent with our mouths open,
Wow.
it means that we have countless opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Countless opportunities in a day in our life to use our words and to learn from them. And we have a lot of we have a lot of opportunity to bless people and a lot of opportunity to curse people.
That's right.
And our words, they can be a blessing or a curse, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that a lot today. We're gonna talk about how we have to learn to control our tongues and how we have to be able to use our words for good and not for evil.
That's good.
And it's hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it's hard for people that are communicating, and it's hard for people who are listening to those communications. Sometimes it can be really difficult. But it shouldn't be a surprise that God has a design for how we use our words, right? James talked about that in chapter 1, verse 19, and I think, Karen, are you going to read that for us?
Yes, I'd love to. It says, chapter 1, verse 19, understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, that you must be quick to listen, slow to speak, and very slow to get angry, which can sometimes really be difficult for us to do, to be slow to speak, especially when someone has spoken something that can be hurtful, or if someone's spoken something that makes you angry, and to keep that under control and keep your emotions in check,
Yeah.
and not to speak,
Yeah.
that really does take a whole lot of Jesus in you to take care of that.
It does.
It does.
And
So-
practice.
Yeah, this whole thing was super, honestly, like tough to study because I was that kid in class that every question the teacher asked, like, handed
No, not you.
hush. And so like I feel like from the time I was born, I was probably talking as a baby, but I've just always I want to talk. And so for some people, maybe quick to listen is easy and you're always listening. But for me, that's actually really tough to just think, you know what, shut up sometimes and listen to what people are saying.
Mm-hmm.
You don't
Yeah.
always have something to interject, like I just did.
Whatever, Brad. You're in a safe place. So yeah, it says to be quick to listen and slow when it comes to talking. But I mean, overall, I think as a culture, we flip those things with the need for gossip
Yes.
and with social media, especially with social media. There's so much ugliness. Like we don't follow His plan when it comes to
Right.
that. And so Brad's going to read.
Yeah, so I'll read James. If you got your Bibles, you can turn there. If you're on the app or whatever, you can click the little Bible and read along. But it's James 3, 1 through what?
You can click on the app
Yeah,
and read it
you
all?
can. Yeah, there's like
That's
a Bible. You can
awesome.
click it and type it in. So James 3, 1 through 12. I'm going to kind of read it, I guess, slow. There's a lot here, and it's a lot of words, but it's so unbelievably important. So try to kind of trek with me if you can.
Well, we're going to break it down afterward. too,
Yeah,
so.
we'll break it down. But dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly. Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in its mouth, and a small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. And in the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire.
Wow.
And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It's a whole world of wickedness. He's talking about your tongue right now. He's talking about my tongue. It is a whole world of wickedness corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises, this hit me, but sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and then sometimes it curses those who have been made in the very image of God. And so blessing and cursing come pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives, or does a grapevine produce figs? No, you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. That's just, it's a lot there, and we'll have to kind of break it down. But I thought it was interesting that he talked about you can even tame animals that don't have the brains that we have and don't have the communication skills that we have and all the things, but we can't tame our own tongue. I can tame my cats better than I can tame my tongue. And I just thought that was super crazy and interesting. Like, it's no one can tame the tongue. Why not? You know?
Why not?
It's hard.
Oh my God, why? So, Karen, you're going to read Proverbs 18:21.
Yes. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue.
That's a lot.
That I know that was really
That was not
a
very
lot.
It was very short, but I feel like there's so much there. Like, I think that when you read that, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Like, I know that there are sometimes that I'll be reading my Bible and I'll read these statements and I'm like, wow, like that was probably really, really impactful, like in Bible times. But like now, it's probably overstated. But like, if you look up teenagers and young adults that take their own lives right now due to like mocking and tearing down, there's like, in the last 3 years, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of people that have taken their own lives, and it's because words have the power of life and death.
Right.
And the thing about it is that words also have the power to wound or heal. And so, like life or death, why are there so many people that are using their words for death, to speak death? Wound or heal, why are so many people using their words to wound?
Right.
Carly's 13, and she'll show me things like on her phone of people like having conversations, and fortunately none of these have come to her because like Mama Bear would like have to come out. But like I still, like when I see these things that teenagers are saying to other teenagers, like it breaks my heart, because I wonder what is happening in that kid's life that's making them so angry toward other people. I was sharing with Karen and with Brad before class. She was showing me texts from kids to this person that she knows that said like, you should die. Nobody cares about you. Don't you know that? Like, that's awful. Like, to say to another person. And like, one of my friends, I was talking to her today, and she was telling me that her daughter said that there's groups of teenagers that will put another teenager in a text message group and then talk about them. And they know that they're in that group because they added them to it. And so they're just cutting this person and they're sending it specifically to them for that purpose, to hurt them. And I don't understand. So my question to y'all right now is how have you personally felt the destructive power of words?
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, so the destructive power of words, I definitely felt, I guess, in elementary school because I was a dork and I talked too much. But yeah, so I specifically remember a time whenever I was always nerdy or whatever, but I remember this girl, Kelly Campbell. I'm friends with her on Facebook. I hope she doesn't see this.
Watching.
But she made fun of me in class in front of everybody and made fun of the way I walked and said I walked goofy or whatever. That now, in hindsight, I mean, totally dumb. I should have brushed it off my shoulder. But for years, I mean, I'm a 33-year-old man, and sometimes will still think, I wonder if that person thinks I'm walking goofy, or I wonder what they're, and it's like from one phrase that she said as a kid in elementary school, 30 or 25 years later, I'm still thinking about that one phrase, which that's a really small example, but it's just crazy how less than probably 5 seconds of what she said for 25 years
has had an impact
on me.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
And one of the things that I think is interesting too, did y'all have cell phones back then?
No.
So you didn't
My
have
dad
a
had
cell
a car phone, like in the box thing.
So there was probably like no texting and no
texting.
Facebook and stuff. Like, that had an impact on you for the rest of your life from elementary.
Right.
And now in 2020, like so many kids are getting message after message and ugliness after ugliness, and they can't get away from it,
Yep.
Like I remember when I was a kid, like, at school, we lived on a farm. Jeff always says we live out in the sticks. And so I couldn't wait to get to school to see my friends because I lived so far away from them. And we had a party line. So like,
we did too.
What's that?
So like I could pick up the
party
phone.
line?
Yeah.
You have several people on the line, and it's like you'll be on the phone, and you'll be
somebody
talking,
else will pick
and
up.
they'll be like, "Hello, I need to make a call." So you would have to get off your phone so they could make a call at another house.
No, we didn't have that.
Yeah.
We had dial-up, AOL messaging.
AOL Messenger.
Yeah, that's what we were
Oh,
on.
young people.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so sweet.
Whippersnappers.
But like, I couldn't wait to get there. But now, like, they don't have to because it's just all they have to do is FaceTime somebody and they're right there with them
There's
in their
no
bedroom.
reprieve. There's no time
There's
of rest for them to have any healing or any time of a sanctuary because it's always always on them, and a constant, almost like I don't even know the word that would. It's like it just never lets up,
Yeah.
and it's that relentless.
Relentless.
Right.
And it's but you have to wonder where those kids and those teenagers, where that seed comes from. Where is that beginning at? Is that a home life situation,
Right.
or is that a heart issue that they've had from a past hurt when they were a child that they're carrying? Because you always project your hurt onto someone else, and you may not even realize it. And there's times I know he talked about where you want to make that person hurt. You've been hurt, so how can I take you and take back that authority where I feel like I have some power over myself now because I've been hurt.
Right.
And those stories he was talking about it's very impactful if you think about, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of kids have this going on so much that if we don't take and be careful with our words, how are we contributing to what's even going on in their lives? And it takes that to a whole nother level of how much our words, how impactful they are.
Yeah.
And I know we're talking about teenagers and kids, but I mean, really, for adults too, we see it
Yes.
an equal amount, and maybe it's different or a little more crafty, and maybe not a direct assault, but kind of these more backhanded, subtle statements. I like what Matt Chandler had said about somebody was at the Cowboys game, and he was like, "Oh, you were there? Yeah, I had second row seats or whatever. Where'd you sat?" And then he said backhanded, he was like, oh yeah, I've never sat up that high, you know? And it's not like this direct slap,
Yeah.
but in that little statement, he was saying, yeah, you couldn't afford the good seats, and downing the person. And I think as adults, we see it just
Yeah.
as much, just in a different, more crafty way.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and this doesn't really totally relate to that, but like an overt on Facebook one day, one of my friends posted like, do you wear a mask? And I just put the word no. Like this was way back when, before it was like whatever it is right now, like before it was mandatory. But I put no, and someone that I do not know commented on there and said, well, I hope you die. I hope you catch COVID and die. And I was like, wow, that's,
Ouch.
wow, like that's
Jeez.
big time. Like I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Like
Yeah.
that's terrible. I'm sorry that you feel that way, person who I'm now going to stalk on Facebook for 30 minutes and see what I can figure out about you. So how do you guys think that we equip, like how do you equip yourself and how do you equip your kids to deal with like those words, the words of others?
I think, I mean, for me personally, it's taking each area of each day and how can I use God's word and take this and make it into a positive?
Yes.
Even when, you know, that person may be really having a rough time or a bad day and not filtering themselves or not really being conscious of what I say, how it can affect you. So just asking Holy Spirit to really just kind of buffer for me and maybe look at trying to look past the words and the hurt and where is that coming from?
Right.
Yes.
You know, because there's always a base to that. There's always a seed to that. So if we can take time, and I think that's where it goes back to speak, listen, be slow, take your
Yes.
time, and you know, it's not always easy to do, and I don't always get it right, but I mean, that just plays a big part for me daily to try to,
And I think the person's intent,
yes.
too, you're saying get to where they're coming from, and not all hard words are destructive words. Some hard words are
Sometimes
necessary.
we need those.
Yeah, and so to hear something and say, what is this person's intent? Is it because they love me and they care for me and they're
Yes.
saying
Right.
something that I recognize,
Yes.
I need to
Yes.
deal with this, versus are they speaking out of their own insecurities and in a
Yes.
hurtful way?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I know, like, dealing with a teenager, having a teenager, like, it's so hard for her. It's hard for me to listen and to worry and think about where's this coming from in this person. And I know that it's really hard for her too. And she kind of gets mad at me sometimes and she'll be like, Mom, well, they're not a Christian. And I'm like, well, we should show them how to be. We should show them what it, you know, when it says in the Bible that we are going to bless our enemies, bless those that curse us, then who are we if we don't do that?
Yeah.
So if
Right.
somebody says something ugly to us, we're going to come up with something nice to say about them. She loves that. I liked when Matt Chandler talked in the video about like the sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And
baloney.
Karen said she'd never heard "I'm rubber, you're glue."
Oh,
I've
yeah.
not heard that. I was like, what?
Yeah, it's gonna bounce off me and stick to you.
Yes.
So 3 illustrations in our verse. If we put bits into the mouths of horses, so they obey us, then we guide their whole bodies as well. A small rudder makes a huge ship turn wherever the pilot chooses to go, even when the winds are strong. And so I think that it's really important for us to think about and remember that if it's controlled well, our words can be very effective.
Yes.
And they can be wonderful. They can make a huge impact and like really, really affect someone in a really great way. But if it's not controlled well, then the disaster for it can be enormous. And so the third point that he makes in that verse is the same way the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It's a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. Brad, do you want to talk about the infrastructure thing here?
I'm trying to remember what I talked about with infrastructure.
About the in Europe and how like
Amsterdam.
they're-
Oh, yeah. So me and my wife, we we just got back, and my girls, we went on vacation for a couple of days, and we were driving back, and honestly, the girls were getting on my last nerves because they were being too loud and talking too much, and it was just a lot. So I put in my headphones. You shouldn't do that while you're driving. I'm sorry. I put in my headphones, and I listened to this lesson again. I didn't have anything else to do, and then I listened to. So I already had this on my mind, and I listened to. There are these YouTube channels that are all about infrastructure, and I don't know why. Growing up, my whole life, I've loved roads and how roads connect together and how they'll run through inhospitable land and just anything infrastructure. And so I was watching this video about some of the rising sea levels in Europe that are really affecting Amsterdam and affecting Venice, and just what possibilities infrastructure-wise they can do to kind of mitigate that. And they were talking about building a dam really across the English Channel and then up around, blocking the whole of the sea that would go into Amsterdam. But he went into a problem that could cause is because it's salt water, but there are rivers that flow into that body of water. If they dam it off, then eventually that whole body of water will become fresh water, because the rivers will eventually dilute the salt water, and how that can change the entire ecosystem there, and it will really affect it. And when I was driving, I just started thinking, it's the same thing with our speech, that if our speech right now is, we've created an environment, and we've created, like hate and anger and just destructiveness, how if we dam that off and change, like if it changes, it can change the entire ecosystem. It can change the entire habitat. So the same way the fresh water would eventually change the whole region, changing our words and the things that we speak can change what's going on around us in our environment.
So good.
Yeah.
That's true.
I know, it blew my mind because, like, when you first started talking about infrastructure, I was like, blah, blah, blah. I don't know what he's talking about. I don't even know what infrastructure is. But, like, I thought that you were going to say that the salty water would contaminate the fresh water.
Right.
And so when you said that the fresh water changes the salty water, like, that just blew my mind.
Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
God he can dilute that evil with good.
Yeah.
And that was, I think that's awesome. So in our lesson, Matt Chandler really pointed out, like, how our words change how we view things. And like Karen and I were talking about, like meeting somebody for the first time, and you already don't like them because somebody said something about that person. And so, like,
It just puts that thought process already into motion. And it's crazy how you can just hear a conversation of how we were talking, and it's like, well, so-and-so, did you know they're coming, and da-da-da, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, I think she's this, or I don't really care for that, and you're like, you've not even really met them, or, they've come from another place, and whenever that happens, it just already contaminates our mind. And how many times do we speak words that contaminate others around us, and we don't even realize that we've done that? And how much accountability do we need for ourselves to stop and think, every word we speak, everything we do has a reaction, and it causes others to have a reaction. And I mean, it's really mind-boggling whenever we were talking about that, because I've done it, and it's like, you want to stop yourself, and getting into this really makes you stop and think about every word.
What stood out
It is.
to me, like, so much, and I hope I'm not jumping ahead, but just in, was it Psalms or Proverbs, when it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and that the things that we say, talking bad about another person or trying to change someone's opinion or whatever, is really just a picture of what your heart is like. And so if you notice you're constantly saying, angry, rude things, or if your speech is full of bitterness and you're still rehashing what happened to you 30 years ago or whatever. Like, your speech is a measure of whatever is going on inside. And I loved what he said, and it made me think, I do real estate, and I've found myself sometimes it's easy to want to, as it say, somebody else that sells more than you, or somebody that does better than you, it's easy to want to say, well, yeah, but they do this, and
right.
that, or
they
whatever.
And
that is, it's just a picture of our insides, and that
that insecurity.
the speech is, revealing insecurity, and it's revealing what's going on inside of us. And so it's bad, but it's such a blessing that if you want to know if you're an angry person, it's not going to be hard to figure it out. How do you talk? If you're dealing with perversion and you've got lust or whatever, what is your speech like? Your speech can reveal what's going on inside.
Yeah, man. Karen, read Ephesians 5:4. Will you please?
Yes. Let there be no filthiness or foolish talk or crude joking, which are out of place, but instead let there be thanksgiving.
That's good stuff.
Yes, that is very.
I think that a lot of times, like when you hear cursing, like even when, like I read the title of this week and it said blessings and curses, like I didn't realize what it was going to be talking about. I think people get confused because they're like, well, like, I'm not a witch, I can't put a curse on someone, or like, I'm not doing spells, or like, I'm not using profanity, so I'm not cursing them. But like, that's totally not what this is saying. Like, this is saying that cursing is a verbal attack or hatred or violence of the heart toward a person. And then like, the thing that was so impactful to me is it's a person who bears the image of our Creator.
Yeah.
Because
That's powerful.
all people bear the image of our Creator, right? Like we were talking about before, I want us to talk about this for a while. We've got a lot of time. And so, like, how many times do we use comments or jokes to dehumanize another person?
Right.
Like, we think that people that are famous, like, they're not going to know because who am I? I'm just a little nobody. And so they're not going to know. So I can say this negative thing about this person, or, that person is an addict. And so, like, I can look down on them, and I can group them as not a person anymore.
Yeah.
Like, they're not a specific person. They're this group of people that I don't like. And so, like, I'm cursing them.
Yes.
I'm talking about them negatively. I'm showing hatred, and violence is coming from my heart on that person. But I'm a Christian, right? I go to church on Sunday.
Yes.
What do you guys think about that? Like, have you done that before? Like, or
No, I don't think that.
not once. I can't come up with any.
I think so much of it is intent. So, what we were kind of talking about before was, if somebody is a preacher's kid, like sometimes you would see a new person comes into church, but you'd get that phone call from somebody else that knows them. It's like, oh, well, you need to watch your back because they're this and they're that, and they're going to cause you all of this trouble. And I always think, no, I want to get to know them for myself. I want to know them for who they are, and not because of what you said. But so often those things are done, and we need to examine our intention. So what is the intention of that person calling?
Yes.
Is it because they're jealous of the individual, or because they've been hurt in the past, or whatever? But I think the intention is what's super important, and specifically in us. But you had mentioned kind of renaming. Actually, you had talked earlier about abortion specifically, and the renaming of that.
Yeah, like it's no longer like a baby, or it's a choice. It's a woman's body, and so they have that platform to stand on. Well, it's my choice and it's my body, and you can't take that away from me. But
we take away that human side.
Right. We take away it's an it instead of a baby with a heartbeat.
Yes.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's no longer that. We talked about masks and how like the stop the spread. So like, or what was the other one? love your neighbor, wear a mask or whatever. So if you don't wear a mask, does that mean that you don't love your neighbor? Like, there's just, it's taking away that personalization and making it a group of things that people can talk about and say ugly things about and not feel bad about it. And I think that's so hard.
I think realizing that, so the things that we say are genuinely about someone or an individual, and just grouping. Sometimes we can say things and excuse our speech whenever it's grouped as a whole person and not an individual. I remember in the Syrian refugee crisis, whenever there were these big debates about whether we could take them or whether we couldn't and all of that. And I remember seeing a friend of mine that was a pastor that said, he actually in his Facebook post said, those dirty dogs need to stay where they belong. And honestly, it just gripped me, because it's kind of easy when you're talking about a whole group of people to say something like that, but not view each person, like each individual, because you're actually speaking about a person that Jesus loves and cares for. Politics aside, maybe we can't take them or whatever, but either way, as a believer, I can say, my heart hurts for you in the situation that you're in, and I can care for you. Maybe I can't do something, or there's this, political issue, but be careful about your speech, even in the all Republicans or all Democrats or all of the, because they're people and they're individuals that you're speaking about.
Right. And I think that it's interesting that you said, like, there was a post about it, because that person, I wonder if they would have said the same thing out of their mouth, or if it was so easy to say because it was coming from their fingers onto, just projected out there instead of.
Makes it such a different platform.
Right.
We have to really be careful, because we can get behind that part of we're not making it personal.
Right.
And when we take that part away, it really does dehumanize that person and how much they have a life and what that life entails. It just takes a whole nother level for that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like how in this verse, like, stringing these ideas together, like with the horse's bit and the rudder and the spark of the fire and the deadly poison and the salty pond, like one little bitty comment can completely change and have like just this huge disproportionate damaging effect.
Right.
Like I have a person that, like, out of love for another person, I said, oh, I'm really nervous about this. And it completely changed the way someone else viewed this relationship. And I meant it in love, but like, I shouldn't have said it, like my one single little spark caused this person to have a raging fire, not a raging fire, but like have a negative idea of who this person was. But like for me, like especially we do Celebrate Recovery, people change. People can completely change. And so that person that I said that about, that was years ago. Like I don't know that person anymore. And maybe they don't do those same things anymore, and here I am like not judging, I wasn't judging, I was just telling a fact, but like sometimes facts need to be left in your pocket.
Have you ever had though, like, maybe with your spouse or someone that you're extremely close to, that on a more intimate relational level, that it's like that one thing you could say that would just hit them, like that one soft spot where you could, and I think probably we've all been tempted in the heat of a moment or an argument to be like, oh, if I just use that one line.
You want to go for the jugular.
I'm a very submissive wife. I don't do
well,
that.
Whatever. But whenever it said the tongue is it's a spark that can set the whole forest ablaze. And I was thinking how a tongue unchecked, and maybe you getting in that one dig to your spouse or that one line that is going to hurt them, like one phrase that lasts 5 seconds could result in divorce, your child growing up in a single-parent home, or it could be the difference of every other weekend. Now you're having to drive 3 hours and meet halfway or whatever because of one little phrase, because we just could not tame our tongue.
Karen and I were talking about blended families like before, and we have a blended family. I call my older girls my girls. They're my girls.
Yes.
But I've always had to really watch myself with talking about their mom, because I don't want Carly to have a negative idea of her. Like, I don't want her to say, oh, well, Amanda, blah, 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 because Amanda is her sister's mom, and she's very important to our family, and we love her. And so we want to say good things about her, and we want to speak blessings into her life, because she is the mom of my girls. And so that's not to say that we've always had great times and that we've never had, like, we've never disagreed on anything. She knows. No, we've had disagreements. We've disagreed about how we raise our girls. We've disagreed on, different things, but she's still their mom, and they still love her. And so it's important for my kid to love her too, because that's her sister's.
That's good.
And you can take one point of explosion that might bring words that you could go back and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
Right.
But that other person will relive that, like you were saying, as a young person, you relive that for years to come when those impacts. And that's why it's so important, our responsibility. So many times we forget how responsible we are for those words, even in situations that are hard or uncomfortable or not what we would want. We still have to be very thoughtful, and it's not easy because flesh, and that's why I'm just taking that time and letting Holy Spirit, because you can be in your spouse, be in the heat of that moment, and then Holy Spirit say, kind of, and that we don't always get it right, but because you can go back and you can't take those words back, and you can't forget those things, and they can make that impact in years to come. It's so important that we take that time and be slow and remember, like, Carly's listening. And Carly's going to repeat that, and then she's going to repeat that, and then where does that stop? Because those words are just ever-reaching.
Well, which is probably why he compares it to something that spreads, like a fire, because you can say the phrase once, but it spreads. Or a poison, like gets in your bloodstream and it has to spread. Like you might not immediately see the effects of it, but over a lifetime it spreads.
It does. Gosh, that is so good. I'm going to spit out like a string of questions, and these are things that I pulled just from the lesson this week, and we're not going to answer them right now because we don't have time to do it, but it's like, I think it's really important for us to think about these things. So how have your wounds affected your view of your self-worth? How do those things relate to how do those things affect the way that you relate to other people and how you relate to God? How do careless words spoken by Christians harm the reputation of our church? And then by extension, Jesus Christ. Like, we are an extension of him. So when we say harmful things, like, how does it affect how people view us as Christians and how people view Jesus? And then you've talked about these earlier, but when you get angry, what does that reveal about your heart? And what kind of sinful speech is hardest for you to control? This one, cursing, crudeness, boasting, lying, gossiping. And then what does that reveal about your heart? Like, that says something about you.
It's tough.
This one was really hard for me. I went through this earlier. It was almost like I was in like a CR step study. Whom have you recently spoken to in a way that tears down rather than builds up? And what person or people do you often find yourself speaking to or talking about in a sinful way? And then you can identify those things. You can, okay, well, I have a problem with this, and that's what I need to ask the Lord to help me with.
You can do it.
It's time. It's time.
You can do it.
I'm going to be really raw. I just did a Jeff Watson again. I clapped. So I owe y'all thank y'all for joining in with me. You're such supporters.
Our step study.
So before we close tonight, most people know, a lot of our church families, my friend on Facebook, we had a great loss in my life 10 days ago, and I can remember a conversation that I had a couple of months ago where I said to my cousin Dave, I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. And I know that today, on October 14th, 2020, I would absolutely set myself on fire. We lost David on October 4th, and I would do anything to take those words back. But they can't be taken back, and I can't make it up to him again. We're not going to have another day at the beach, and we're not going to have another road trip to go on. And we talked about that afterward and stuff, but like, I miss him immensely, and I would do anything for 5 more minutes with him. So don't let the words that you say be words of regret. Build people up and speak life into them. Give them love, because one of the days that is going to come sometime, you're going to say something to someone and they're going to be the last words that you speak to them. So tonight, I just want to challenge you to prayerfully examine your heart and ask God to convict you and forgive you of sinful attitudes. Read Romans 12, 9 through 21, and let God's word speak to your heart. And then intentionally seek reconciliation with people, because if your heart is harboring heartful words, then your heart has something in it that needs to be healed. And so don't let those things that you say to others be things that you're going to regret or that they're going to regret that have been said.
Wow. Yeah.
So good.
So we will see you guys October 28th. I hope that it's been great.
Love you guys.